Hey, we're doing a series on pain and suffering. And if you've not been through some kind of suffering or storm, typically you're either going into one or coming out of one because that's the way life is. But we're going to find from Job that there's a lot of things that we can learn about storms and suffering, even random things that happen. Maybe you've lost a loved one, or maybe you got a diagnosis that you had cancer. I mean, we've been through all that, and those things come out of nowhere. Well, we're going to look at the life of Job in the book of Job, written 4,000 years ago. And I really think the book was written to help us grapple with the whole answer of why. And it's not that you'll ever find out. Job never finds out at the end of it. Let me go ahead and spoil it for you. God never tells him at the end of the book why it happened. He just like, hey, I'm for you. I created everything. Be faithful. And sometimes that's hard to hear. And so when we read through the book of Job, Job chapter 1, I'm not going to read it today because I want you to have time to read through it because there's so much in there. But there's three big ideas that I want you to see. And the first is we have a real enemy, and his name is the devil, Satan, Lucifer. And a lot of people say, hey, I just don't believe that. I just think that's a fairy tale. Well, a lot of people have told me they've been married to the devil. And so, that kind of blows that theory. Or I don't believe in hell, but you've told people on, the interstate to go there. And so there's something there that we keep talking about it. But the Bible says there really is an enemy who's called the devil, and he was an angel, a rogue angel. And you need to read the Bible, okay? Ezekiel chapter 14, Revelation chapter 12, there's some in Isaiah. I mean, there's so many different passages that kind of point you back to how that all happened. But he is real. And Paul said that we need to prepare ourselves, that we don't fight against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers of darkness and powers in the air. And Jesus even said about the devil, and he had a conversation with the devil. He said, he comes to steal, kill, and destroy. He wants to destroy your marriage. He wants to destroy your kids. He wants to destroy your heart and your attitude. The second thing is we live in a broken world, and a lot of people, they know something's wrong, but they just can't put their finger on what it is. And our world's been broken by sin. And I know that sounds real fundamental and all that, but you go all the way back to Genesis chapter 3, and we had a perfect world. There was no disease, there was no earthquakes, there was no viruses. There was this amazing relationship between a man and a woman. And then in Genesis chapter 3, when they ate the fruit that was forbidden, said, hey, don't eat that fruit, don't do your own thing, don't go your own way. When they did that, they unleashed really the gates of hell on our world. And it's the brokenness that you see around you. And we could go into a lot of detail about that. The theologians and the philosophers, I love it, the way they try to characterize it. So it's like somebody that walks up on a shipwreck. And it's like maybe a sailor that has amnesia. And he walks up on a shipwreck on a beach, and he realizes, hey, there's something wrong here. There's all these relics, and there's everything that's out of place. And I know something happened here, but I'm not sure. Well, what happened to wreck our world is sin. But here's the third thing where it gets really personal. No matter who you are, at some point in your life, you're going to face pain and suffering. And there's a lot of people that say, no, if you have faith, if you go to church, if you pray a lot, if you give a lot of money, if you don't break the 10 Commandments, first of all, you've already done that, but then you won't get sick. And that's just not true. You're going to have trouble. You're going to have problems. Job, the Bible says, was the greatest man on the face of the earth. God even said about him, hey, Job is a righteous man. He obeys me, he trusts me, he loves me, and yet all these things happened to him in the span of probably just a few hours where he lost everything. The terrorists that took his livestock, the lightning that destroyed his businesses, and the worst one, the tornado that killed all of his kids. See, you begin to realize there's no way to bubble wrap your life, and that God uses pain and suffering as a part of his plan in our world to bring the world closer to him. You say, well, did the people in the Bible have pain and suffering? Paul had a thorn. All the disciples were tortured. If you remember, Jesus died on the cross. So even our emblem that we follow is an emblem of suffering and difficulty. And God uses that. You say, well, what difference does it make then that I'm a Christian? Well, it makes all the difference in the world, because the gospel means you can suffer well, that you don't have to be bitter, that you can be better, and that God can come in and build all these things in your life that weren't there before these things happened to you. And listen, I know a lot of people say, I just don't believe that. Well, Job reminds us that even though there's evil and suffering in the world, it's limited. And that's the beauty of the gospel. 1 John 4:19 says that the enemy, the devil, is in control of the world. All the world's under his control. But to take heart, Jesus says, because I've overcome the world. And God uses the things that he tries to do that are evil, and he turns them for good. Matter of fact, he takes all the pain and suffering that he wants to inflict on you, the devil, and he turns it into the opposite of what the devil wanted to accomplish. You say, how do you know that? Well, because we're reading about Job, and you've heard about the patience of Job. And all the way through the Bible, and we do this series, you're going to find that Job, even though he struggled, even though he wrestled, he never gave up on God. He had faith. See, faith is embracing the God we know in the suffering that we don't understand. And I don't say that lightly, because I deal with pain and suffering every day, and I know how hard it is. And I'm going to give you 3 takeaways here at the end so that you can kind of maybe write these down or talk about these or share it with a friend who's really struggling. The first one is this. It's not just about what is happening to you, but also what God is doing in you. And none of us like to hear that. Like, I'm suffering. I'm in pain. I'm lonely. And yes, and we grieve that, but also God is working in you. I think about all the things that we've been through in our lives, and Alicia, who is precious and had cancer 16 years ago, and I remember thinking for a moment, why her? Why not me? But then we moved right into what's happening here. Pulled our marriage closer together. It built in us a clarity of why we're here on this planet and what's really important. And so God will do things in you that are good in spite of all the bad things that you're experiencing outside of you. Number 2, instead of focusing on what you don't know, embrace the Jesus that you do know. Now look, Job did not have all the information that we have. I mean, he knew about God. He trusted God, but he didn't have Jesus. And even in spite of that, he said, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I'll return. He was saying, everything I have is by the grace of God. All my livestock, all my kids. I mean, the only thing he got left with was a nagging wife. And he says, I realize, everything I have, they all have an expiration date. Let me tell you, if you build your hope and faith on anything but Jesus, you're going to be sorely disappointed. Your life has an expiration date. Your spouse has an expiration date. Your 401k can be taken in a moment's notice. We know that. Here's the third thing. Accept the new life and vision that is coming out of the death and brokenness of your dreams. And man, that's where God is making things new. And we sang a song Sunday about God is making new wine. It's in the crushing, okay? It's in the plowing of new ground. It's in the planting of that dead seed that God begins to do a brand new work in your life. So struggle, my friends, but let's struggle well.